Joey Logano outduels Brad Keselowski to get his 32nd career win and no big wreck on the final lap. Let's talk about NASCAR in Atlanta. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host, Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR in Atlanta. We're going to talk about your winner, Joey Logano, who has punched his ticket into the NASCAR playoffs. We're going to talk about how there was a lot of respect on the final lap of this race, no big crash at the end of it. And then, of course, we'll talk about Ross Chastain's move on Kevin Harvick later on in the show as well. Let's go ahead and get right on into it. So I want to start out by talking about something that I thought was really exciting in this race. This is the third race with the Atlanta, the new configuration, the mini Daytona, mini Talladega configuration. I heard some of the broadcast members calling this a drafting race. I've been calling it a pack race for quite some time. This is the third pack race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and it's becoming a racetrack that I'm actually really enjoying. When NASCAR first decided to do this, make higher banking, repave the track, run a higher downforce, lower horsepower package to turn this into a Daytona, a pack racing type track. I was skeptical. I was like, I don't think we need any more of this. We don't need any more fluke winners. But today's race, and really this entire racetrack's three races at this racetrack, its entire pack racing history has actually been really enjoyable to me, and that's because we've seen, for one, respectable racing, especially the last two races. We saw that last July in the summer race, and then we saw it today for sure, 100% in the spring race this year. And I'm becoming to really like this racetrack for a couple of reasons. I can look at a few drivers, a few cars, and tell who's the best cars in the race. I can tell Brad Keselowski was a really fast race car because he led multiple laps today. He led, I believe it was 47 laps led by Brad Keselowski. And then you have Joey Logano, who was obviously the fastest car of the field. You could look and tell he could do whatever he wanted with the race car, essentially. I mean, if he was somewhere up front, he could go up there and snatch the lead. It's what he did on the final lap. He did it all day long, and he led a whole bunch of laps. He actually led a race high 139 laps of the 260. So obviously Joey Logano was the fastest car of the race, and it was fun to see guys like Keselowski, like Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell try to take that away from him, see if they could get by him there at the end of the race, and they weren't able to do it. And I just want to say I think that was really important because Brad Keselowski even said in his post-race interview that it is possible to race with respect and race cleanly at the end of this thing. And I think that's really fitting considering we had guys like Kyle Busch all week and other drivers talk about racing with respect. And can we do that at these type of pack races? Not necessarily was it about this race specifically, but I think that just really plays well that we race a respectful race today, and it says a lot about all the drivers up front, the entire top 10, and really the entire field, that if you race with respect and you don't make ridiculous moves at the end of these races, you can end a race with clean race cars, and that's what I love to see. And I know we're going to get wrecks, and I'm not against wrecks, but I'd rather see what we had today, a regulated finish and a great finish to the line, a great race without a whole bunch of big wrecks at the end. So really applaud all the drivers for doing a great job today. But let's take a look at the finish here, the actual finish itself. You see Brad Keselowski is leading the race, and then Joey Logano gets a huge run on the bottom lane, shoots up to the top. Keselowski didn't have time to block it. That goes back to your racing with respect. Keselowski could have just shot up there and caused a big wreck, which would have, obviously took both of them out. Didn't do that. You see a huge push from Christopher Bell there. Joey Logano gets, and Joey Logano is able to pull away with that push. I don't know if Christopher Bell was behind him, if Logano was going to be able to hold that. I think Logano might have stalled out there, but that also comes with his race car was really good handling, really fast all day, and he was able to get the win. So the pole sitter and the winner of the race, and he also won stage 1 and finished second in stage 2. So 59 points for Joey Logano in this race, which is really impressive. The max you can get in a race is 60, and Joey Logano got 59, so that's going to help his point situation as well. So let's just take a look at the top 10 here. We'll go ahead and through the entire top 10. I mentioned Brad Keselowski in the comments he made after the race, but I do want to talk about Brad Keselowski's team because his teammate, Chris Buescher, was actually running up front in the top until he got caught up in that wreck. I believe that wreck was on lap 190, but he had a pretty decent handling race car as well. It was obviously a top 10 race car at this Atlanta race as well, but got caught up in some trouble. But the amount that this team, this RFK team, has improved since the start of last year is incredible. It's amazing to see Brad Keselowski, a super experienced race car driver, a champion driver, your 2012 champion, won a ton of races. It's cool to see him get back up front and start to win. Obviously, as a Busch fan, I'm no Brad K fan by any means, but it is exciting to see what this team has been able to do and have they been able to strive. They got the Bristol win late last year. At the beginning of 2022, they were really offset. They were not even a top 20 race car most of the week. Most weeks in the first half of that season. Really improved going into the second half. Like I said, got that win at Bristol and really has excelled. Keselowski and Buescher's had a lot of speed, especially the 6 car. Brad Keselowski's had a ton of speed this season. Had probably top 5, top 10 race car speed all year long. Just couldn't put together those finishes. And as he said, if he can get to finish, if he can put together a good finish, that'll really turn this season around for the Brad Keselowski team. So really exciting. I would not be surprised at all to see Brad Keselowski get a win this season, whether it's at a pack racing track or just at a regular intermediate track, short track. Don't count out Brad Keselowski for at least making the playoffs, but getting a win or a couple of wins this season. Definitely want to watch those guys. You have Christopher Bale, who was able to finish third. Like I said, gave Logano that big push there at the end. This is a couple of times now we've seen Christopher Bale running up front at the end of the plate race, but isn't quite in the position to make the move. That goes back to respect. Isn't quite into the position to make a move for the win. We saw it at Daytona in the 500, finished third there. We saw it last year at Atlanta where I don't think he actually got the third place finish or the second place finish that he got because he went below the yellow line. He broke the yellow line rule, but he was up front at the end of it, and we've seen that multiple times now. Out of Christopher Bale, where he's right there at the end of these plate races, of these pack races, but can't quite get up there to get the win. But that'll be interesting to see if he could do that someday. But he's been fast at these plate races over the last few weeks. Once again, goes back to that. I could tell who the fast cars were. Corey LaJoie, great job getting a 4th place finish. This is now, he finished top 5 last year. This is his best career finish of his career, obviously. Previously, it was 5th at Atlanta last year in the spring. And if you remember, and it was talked about a lot on the broadcast, he was running in the top 5 last year in the summer race at Atlanta. So Atlanta's probably Corey LaJoie's favorite racetrack. He's been up front a ton. Like I said, got top 5 last year in the first race, and then of course was in the top 5 at the end of the summer race last year until he got caught up in a wreck. But a career high finish for 4th for Corey LaJoie. Definitely seen an improvement out of the Spire Motorsports team at every other racetrack outside of these plate racing, pack racing type of tracks, but it's good to see him, exciting to see him get another top 10 on the season. Corey LaJoie, I believe he was in the playoffs going into the race. I have to take a look at the points, but I believe with this, he's going to be in the playoffs as it currently stands in the top 16 in points. It's going to be fun to watch him. Tyler Reddick was able to get a 5th place finish. He was struggling with some health issues, apparently had some sort of stomach bug all day long, was able to overcome that. Obviously, when you get in the race car, you get the adrenaline going. That feeling probably went away. He was probably able to focus in on racing, was able to get a solid top 5 finish, was running in the top 5 there, especially at the end of the race. Looked to have a decent handling race car, but just didn't have anything really there at the end for Brad Keselowski or Joey Logano. Those Fords were obviously the class of the field all day long, and those Toyotas just didn't quite have anything for them there at the end. Tyler Reddick in the 45, but a solid top 5 day. Denny Hamlin was in the top most of the day, had a good strategy run there at the end of stage 2, and going into stage 3 was able to get up front and finish with a solid 6th place finish, which is a pretty decent day for Denny Hamlin, for sure, finishing 6th. Then you had Ryan Blaney, who was one of those race cars. Like I said, there were a couple of cars, and it was really all the Penske Fords plus Keselowski. So all Fords that were really fast. Ryan Blaney was able to overcome a lot. He got past there at the end. Things got a little crazy there on that final lap, so he lost a few positions, finished 7th. But Ryan Blaney had a heck of a day. He was up front for a majority of the day, up front at the beginning of the race, looked to be really fast, sitting 2nd or 3rd most of the evening, and then got caught for speeding on pit road. And we talked about this all day. You cannot get caught for speeding on that long pit road. NASCAR made the pit road super long, so there wouldn't be a wreck getting on it on the front stretch. You had to enter it on the back straightaway. Ryan Blaney got a pit road speeding penalty, almost went 2 laps down, was able to get the wave around, get back on the lead lap, and climb all the way up back to 7th. And that's an impressive day for them. Obviously, a really fast Ford for Ryan Blaney, trying to get his first win in over a season now. So definitely want to watch him this season. He's been close a few times and had some pretty fast race cars this season. Eric Jones making some big moves there in the middle on the final lap of this race, going 3 wide, was able to shoot up there and get an 8th place finish. He wasn't in the top 10 most of the day. Well, like I said, you saw whose cars were really fast, whose weren't. I don't think Eric Jones had a best handling race car, but was able to capitalize once again there at the end of the race and get up there and get a solid top top 10 day, finishing 8th. Ty Gibbs, I didn't even see him. He was having an awful day at the beginning of the day, was able to climb up through the field. And another one of those guys that kind of capitalized there in the final laps when it got 3 wide. Ty Gibbs gets a 9th place finish. And then Kyle Busch, who had a really rough day as well, had to go down pit road in stage 2, wasn't really on the best strategy cycle, lost a ton of time, went back to 15th on the pit stop in stage 2. And then he got caught up in that big wreck with Ross Chastain. He spun, had to go down pit road again for that, lost a ton of track position after that spin, obviously, but was able to climb up to a 10th place finish. Couldn't really do anything. He was stuck on the high lane at the end of the race. Just couldn't really make a move to get the win for Kyle Busch. But once again, another solid top 10 day. We'll see what Kyle Busch can do in that 8 car next week. Remember, that 8 Richard Childress Chevrolet was really fast last year at the road courses. It'll be interesting to see what Kyle Busch can do at Circuit of the Americas next week. Now, I do want to mention that we did have a couple of wrecks earlier on in this race. They were both in stage 3, but they were not right there at the very end of the race, which was obviously kind of not what we usually see. But there was a big wreck on lap 190, which took out a couple of good race cars. Obviously, I think Ty Gibbs was involved. I said Kyle Busch was involved. Took out your 24 driver, William Byron, who was going for his 3rd win in a row. He was up front, took him out. Kevin Harvick, who was leading at the time in his final spring race at Atlanta, unfortunately got involved in that. But let's just take a look at this wreck here. And I saw a lot of people on social media and a couple of drivers blaming Ross Chastain for this. And if you look at it, I think Ross Chastain, you can see here, he goes up high and then cuts back down right on Kevin Harvick's rear bumper. And you just can't do that at this racetrack. We saw how, for the majority of the race, especially with 70-something laps to go in the race, we saw how everybody was giving everybody plenty of room at this race, racing with a ton of respect, and everybody was giving people a lot of room in the corners especially. And there was a little bit of bump drafting going on the straightaways. There was even a little bump drafting going on in the corners, but there was no movement from that 2nd place race car, and that's where Ross Chastain kind of messes up here. Now, I don't think Ross Chastain actually ever ended up touching the rear bumper of Kevin Harvick, but the way he manipulated the air definitely turned Kevin Harvick around, just got him so loose that he wasn't going to be able to control it. I know it wasn't on purpose, but this is the same type of thing we've seen from Ross Chastain at a couple of racetracks. We saw it last year in the summer race at Atlanta. Just want to clean those things up because he's going to lose a ton of... We know he's already lost a ton of respect by a lot of drivers, but in this race specifically, it looks like they kind of strung him out. Nobody wanted to work with him. He ended up getting sucked into the middle and got a 13th place finish, but lost a ton of position there while he was leading following this wreck, and that could have to do with the lack of respect from the drivers around him just because of those moves. I just don't understand it. 70-something laps to go. I know you're pushing it. I know Kevin Harvick seemed to slow down just a little bit there, but I think Ross Chastain just got to clean that stuff up a little bit. I know it wasn't on purpose. I know it's easy for me to say through a camera that he's got to clean it up. I know it's really difficult to do, but you see he was on top, cuts down low. That's gonna mess up the air on the 4 car. And turn him around. I'm not even sure with the way the race was going, with the way air manipulates and all that. I don't know if Ross Chastain could have fixed it, but from what I saw, it looks like it was just definitely on Ross Chastain. No, it wasn't on purpose there, but just try to clean those things up moving forward. But Ross Chastain was clean out of that wreck, but then obviously got shuffled back into the field, and that took out a lot of good race cars in that wreck as well. Then we had another wreck on I believe it was lap 209. We had Kyle Larson and who was really fast. Kyle Larson was in 2nd, and then Eric Almirola. Eric Almirola stayed on 2 pit stops, got fuel only. So that gave him the lead on both of those pit stops, and then the tires were finally wearing. Now, I don't know if he blew a tire. I couldn't quite tell. I think I heard reports that he did blow a tire, but I couldn't really see that on the replay. It looks like he either blew a tire or just got really loose from the old tires and just spun around there in front of the field. Luckily, everybody was able to dodge that except a couple of drivers like Kyle Larson. A few others were obviously involved as well. I believe Tyler Reddick actually got a little bit of damage from that wreck. And then you saw Kyle Larson's car just get totaled out. Glad to see him climb out the race car as well. That was a hard hit there to the driver's side door on the inside wall. But, just a couple of wrecks. Those are your typical race car crashes. Didn't take out a whole lot of drivers. That was actually, some of those wrecks were able to get guys like Austin Cindric, like Ryan Blaney, like Joey Logano back up front so they could race it out for the win, and Brad Keselowski those wrecks up front with the way pits cycled and everything. So yeah, definitely interesting. If there's one more thing I want to talk about that was a positive about this race, like I said, I'm starting to really like this Atlanta configuration. I wouldn't be against going back to the old configuration or the unrestricted engines, but I do like this type of pack racing at Atlanta. But I do want to give props to the Fox broadcast. I know they've been getting a little bit of heat lately the last few weeks, but I thought they did a really fantastic job today. The booth was really interesting to listen to. I liked listening to them. I enjoyed listening to them today. Tony Stewart, Clint Boyer, and Mike Joy, obviously. And then there were definitely way less commercials from what I could tell in this race. A lot more side-by-side commercials and a lot less commercials overall, which was obviously exciting to see as well. And then, of course, just multiple other things was good. I like the ticker they put on the top. And then they did a ton of post-race show, which is exciting to watch. So a great day for the Fox broadcast. They've definitely improved since the Daytona 500, which is good to see. So, give credit where credit is due. But that's really it. That's all I have to talk about after analyzing this NASCAR at Atlanta. It was a really fun race to watch. I really enjoyed watching this one, and I can't wait for next week. We go to our first road course race of the season out in Austin, Texas. Got a couple of big stars, F1 drivers, Kyle Busch obviously driving the 8 car in that race, and then Jimmy Johnson making a return. So obviously tune in next week following NASCAR at Circuit of the Americas. I'll do a Dirty Air video, and that's it. That's really all there is to talk about. And of course, about Kyle Busch finishing 10th. Let's get rowdy.